If you could look like anyone, who would it be?
Look like anyone?
Yeah.
My mother. And not to say that I don't love the way I look, but it's more about how she felt when you looked at her, and how you felt when you looked at her. And I would definitely want that kind of like comfort. I would want somebody to feel comfortable around me the way that people felt sure and comfortable about her.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. That's good. What did you sure say? Sexual, intellectual?
Intellectual. So I've got with supporting other Black woman-owned businesses, especially in adult spaces. And Semi-Sex has a line of dope shirts, and this one is awesome. So I got a bright blue sexual intellectual shirt.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space Podcast. I am your host, Leah, and I'm joined today by Kathryn Elaine of House of Bawdy. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
That is exciting to talk to another business owner. Can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yes. So I own House of Bawdy, and it's a beautiful little love child. It's an adult novelties company. That's cute language for sex toys for everybody who's like, what exactly does that mean? It's an adult novelties company that centers and celebrates the pleasures and wellness of Black people, people of color, queer folks, and people of marginalized genders. I was just kind of overseeing levels of our representation in somebody's kind of diversity checklist, instead of it being its own full vibrant thing. So everything about House of Bawdy, from the person who input the taxes is a queer Afro-Latina woman, from the models who are of a variety of different genders and sexual identities and relationship dynamics, to even the name of the toys that all kind of go back to some kind of like reference to Black pop culture, be it a song or a show or a movie. All of it is very much for us and about us and by us.
So in that, what made you want to build out this company to have as much representation as it does?
So I have always loved just sex wellness and health and being able to just explore yourself and explore what that looks like with a partner, if that's what you choose to do, or multiple partners, if that's what you choose to do. That has always been really important to me. I was an independent consultant for a different company for a while, and I love the connections I made. I love the conversations I got to have. I was purposely putting myself in spaces, in queer communities, in communities that were heavily people of color or Black folks specifically, because there weren't a lot of us having these healthy, judgment-free conversations with one another. And then House of Bawdy by itself was just sparked because the previous company I was working with, it always seemed like the shift in making sure inclusion happened as fully and as vibrantly as I personally thought it could have been. It wasn't really happening very, very quickly, or it seemed like there was this level of convincing that had to happen beforehand. So I just kind of got frustrated and figured, like, I can do this. I want to do this. And I want somebody to not have to argue for the validity of their humanity first before engaging in their pleasure. That informs so much of how marginalized folks in general connect to anything that feels good. There's always this struggle first, and I don't want there to be that.
That's amazing. And I think that's typically, even before we get to, sexuality or wellness, it's always a thing of, having to prove or state that I am human. Like I am an actual human being. And so that to take that hurdle away so that we can move forward into, okay, now that you have been validated as a human being, what else can we accomplish? And that hurdle is seen in so many aspects. there has been since you talk about sexual wellness, recently we have seen in Chloe and Haley, or Hallie, is that, I forgot their names. She brought up the whole Stan Chloe situation, brought up very interesting questions as to what it means as a person to walk into or explore their sexual side, their sexual being, whether it be masculine or feminine. Why do you think that even in 2021, sex is still taboo? Sex toys, woo! What? Hold on, wait a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. Why do you think that it's so hard for an individual to explore and express their while they're getting in touch with their more feminine, masculine, or whatever side, to explore their sexuality?
So I think that it's not that hard for everybody, right? Mm-hmm. There's all of these layers that happen depending on who the individual is, that really broadens the conversation as to why is it a hurdle for that kind of person. If we take the Chloe incident that you brought up, would it have been the same kind of backlash if this was Kim K doing what she always does? If this was some kind of backlash if J-Lo was doing what she always does? Do we have to consider the fact that, one, we were introduced to these two very, very young? And do we have to consider the fact that this is a Black person saying that I own my own body, which in and of itself is revolutionary when you consider the history of a Black person's body never having belonged to itself in this country? Right. I think obviously, yes, of course, sex has this taboo. It's actually the tagline for House of Bawdy is tease the taboo. Let's get close. Let's talk about it. Let's, put the bookends on what is something that everybody is curious about, wants to engage in, is affected by, whatever the case may be. But I think that there are a variety of layers to that question and to the answer, honestly, because I don't think engaging with somebody's sexuality is always taboo, depending on who you are, the influence that you have, how that particular audience perceives you, and that in and of itself is a problem. She should have been allowed to be able to express herself in whatever way felt most appropriate to her, without everybody then turning around and questioning, well, why do you feel comfortable? Because it's less of the why do you feel the need to flaunt yourself, it's how dare you. And that's the problem.
Yes. And I mean, because when we think about the context of it, because even before I saw the video, right, the comments around it made it seem like this woman was naked.
Yeah.
And
I would have supported it either way. Like, okay.
I was like, okay, so so then my thought was, okay, so she's naked on her social media, in her house,
with her phone,
lighting her candles.
Yep.
Bills that y'all don't pay. Okay, all right. I just wanted to understand. And it's just the audacity of other people making comments about what someone else is doing in their house that they pay bills for, with their things, with their own phone, with their own bodies.
Right.
And
like Michael B. Jordan were to do the same thing, which he always does. Do we have a conversation about his shirtless flaunting? Like it's the layers of it,
Right.
For her to be her and be her full self in all of the intersections she occupies. It's like, well, this isn't how we told you to behave. And again, the fact that we were introduced to these two very young people, society has a problem with fetishizing things like that. Where we were introduced to these two in the industry very young, and we see it with, I don't know, like Ariana Grande also. We were introduced to them very young, and you're supposed to stay this young, untouched, pure thing so that we can make you and use you however we want to. But as soon as you engage in yourself for your own consumption, there's a problem because now there's a power struggle happening, and that's
right. So how, as you being Kathryn, as you being you, how do you exercise your power within, taking ownership of your body, of your place in this world?
I think it's two-part, and I can't ever divorce myself from House of Bawdy because it came of me and my own love and my own like frustration and my partner's support, and it's very integral.
Right.
But for me personally, taking care of my own self and my own pleasure or whatever actually shows up very non-sexually. I think that when people hear what I do, they automatically assume that that's how I decide to take ownership of myself. And really it's like, it's what I wear. It's how I feel. It's how I interact with my hair. It's a big thing for me. And I make sure that anybody entering into House of Bawdy or around me also understands that pleasure isn't just sexual. However, your sensual self and your sexual self very much inform one another and is informed by society and so on and so forth. So for me personally, engaging with myself in a pleasurable fashion is quiet. It's by myself. It's reading my books. It's loving on my hair. It's finding pretty lotion. Like, that's my thing. For House of Bawdy, I think that it's important that people understand that because it's me, I know that there are hurdles between oneself and one's pleasure. I get that there's shame. I get that there's guilt. I get that there's socioeconomic hurdles to cross. I get that. And therefore, I'm not saying you're less than for not being able to engage in a particular way. There's a variety of ways you can engage, even just on the website. You can just go and listen to the playlist and dance. That's good. That's fine. You can actually purchase things. That's great. We love that too. You can go and read the erotica that's on the website. That's excellent. It's a way to be able to maybe take a pause mentally, like to be able to know that there are layers to it and there's one way to engage with yourself is really important. I think that I try to make sure that happens with my audience and that it's not all teaching all the time. Yes, there's a lot of that, but also at a really, I don't want to say like non-academic level, but I think when some people find themselves face to face with certain terms or certain teachers or whatever the case may be, it feels very high level. And one of my things is just talking about what we're talking about right now and getting you to see what that larger scope is that academics may be talking about. Like this week that we're talking in anyway is National Condom Day week and month. People already talk about like no glove, no love. Like, let's start with what you know and expand upon it. Like that's my jam.
Okay. So, and because we don't want to leave people out, would you mind describing for the audience the differences between sexual and sensual?
I think that sexuality and sex in general can very much be sensually linked. And I think that sensuality doesn't always have to be sexual. I think that, I mean, even those dictionary definitions are a little, they're very close, but they're a little different. So when I think of, and I always, like to relate it to touch and feelings instead of just the very Merriam-Webster-y type of thing. So when somebody thinks of maybe the intimacy of washing someone's hair, if somebody thinks about maybe slowly lotioning themselves, if somebody thinks about going to sleep in really soft blankets, these things can be very sensual. They can be very calm. They can be very comforting. They can connect you to your senses, sensual, right? If somebody is thinking about, I love tea. So when I brew my favorite teas, I take the time to smell them. I enjoy the experience. I purposely have a clear teapot so I can watch the bubbles. It makes me happy. Like these are sensual things. Sexual things can absolutely pull those things in, right? Can we be, get on those soft blankets? Yes. Can we combine the two? Absolutely. can very like hardcore kink situations be less sensual so that it's focused more on the concentration of sensuality? Absolutely. But there is still a level of intimacy and trust and consent that's happening there. So they can be very much intertwined, or they can be engaged in a way that doesn't make somebody feel like enjoying what's going on with their senses, and how that connects to you mentally and emotionally has to be a sexual experience. It doesn't have to be so pressure filled.
Yeah, it's really good. I think that sometimes in whether we are learning ourselves or learning to express ourselves, whether it be to our partner, to the world, or somewhere in between, um, we kind of have these hurdles, and some of them can be familial, some of them can be societal, they can be personal. Very much take on what other people say that we should feel, think, and all that kind of things. What are some tips or some ways that we can kind of get over or start removing the hurdles for ourselves in looking toward sexual wellness? Yes, we can inform ourselves of the birds and the bees, and we can inform ourselves by going to a Planned Parenthood. But when it comes to sex being more than just a thing that you do to produce a baby or to feel some type of pleasure, I guess, but it becomes something that you own in and of yourself. What are some ways that we can get over some of the hurdles or the mental blocks that we have about it?
I think one of the keywords you use there is mental. I think a lot of what people consider sexual really starts with your mental or emotional wellness. However, that does not mean that somebody who feels emotionally or mentally unwell can't connect to themselves sexually. There's a lot of pressure right now, especially with everybody's access to social media and everybody at home a whole lot more often. We're seeing all of these ways that people can engage with themselves mentally and emotionally, and how hard that is for people, how many more people are going through mental and emotional instability right now. And that doesn't mean that you can't experience sexual pleasure. However, that also can mean that it might be harder, and that's okay. I also think that one thing it's really good for them to keep in mind is that they might need to expand what their idea of sex even is. If you're aiming for orgasm all the time, that can be a lot of pressure, because it's like a race, right? And if you don't get to the finish line, you lost. Like that's hard. If you're holed up in quarantine and everything feels like it's black and white, win or lose, and then you attach that to your body, that's a lot. So being able to expand what that means for yourself, what it means with a partner or multiple ethical, non-monogamous situations, expanding what sex even means to just something that might make you feel good, or whatever definition you have for you. Like, when I do X, I feel like Y, and that's sex for me. That's valid. And I think that that's also a really, really powerful way to take the level of ownership that you're talking about, because if you're not letting society define for you what sex is, which stereotypically is this like male controlling situation, this very like penis in vagina equals orgasm equals baby, and now we're done, and maybe orgasm equals baby. And then
I was going to say, orgasm is not necessary to equal baby.
It's not, and some people really just skip that part. But if that's what your definition is, because that's what you always see, then that also might be something that you might not even realize is ownership that you don't have. Somebody told you what it was and you ran with it. But if you take back what that definition is, and you maybe learn the language around it or learn the feelings around it, when you express that to someone else, you're also giving them permission to rework what their concept is of even existing. Because if you're redefining sex, you can redefine anything. And then recognizing, I think back on the mental emotional wellness part, that like, it's okay if not everything feels amazing all the time. And I get a lot of people in different events say things like that, like, oh, sometimes I just don't feel like it, or I don't know how you can do this all the time, you must be really, really happy all the time. No, like, it's okay to use masturbation as a tool for boredom. It's okay to use sensual massage and as a form of helping you get to sleep because you're just like, I'm melatonined out.
Right,
It's
right.
okay to connect all of these different dots of yourself in whatever constellation feels good to you. I think recognizing that helps to alleviate some of those pressures, helps to bring us back to a conversation of ownership, which is not easy for people in a variety of intersections, but being able to respect those things first makes this part a little bit more approachable.
And I think that one of the things that you said is very key is that everything is not black and white. You don't, it's not a situation of if I have sex, I must orgasm or I must reach this point. Otherwise I won't do it.
Yeah.
Because then you could really be in this place of, well, I either have to be happy all the time or I'm sad all the time, instead of being in that place of just being content or being peaceful, of just experiencing, okay, I'm in this moment, I'm present. Things
Yeah.
are happening, whether you're it's okay. It's okay to just be okay.
Yeah, it's definitely okay to be okay. It also brings in the concept, which is also hard for a lot of people, the concept of vulnerability. Like
Yes.
if you are, if you eliminate this goal of orgasm all the time, then you also have to, or if you're, I'm sorry, if you're beholden to this concept of every time I have sex, I have to orgasm, then you can potentially run into, if I don't orgasm, is there something wrong with me? And then you can run yourself into, well, if I can't do it, maybe like I should have, my partner should make sure that I orgasm every time we have sex. But then what if that doesn't happen all the time? Okay, is there something wrong with them? Now we've got all of these little rifts when if we just eliminate, hey, maybe this might not be necessary for you or your body or your partner's interaction. Like, do you like touching them any less? Do you like interacting with them any less, even if we took out this one aspect? For some people, the answer is yes, and that's all good. But for a lot of people, the answer is no. And that's okay. I mean, we're already bringing work into home. We're already not having any kind of break between what it means to like be a parent and be an adult. We're already having these hardships where if you were dating but not cohabitating, like now how are we supposed to see each other interact safely? Or maybe you were together and cohabitating and you don't have a break from one another, and that creates a whole thing. We've already got so many other pressures. Why apply it to something that can feel good too? Vulnerability is that's a hard one.
It is. And we've talked about it before on the show. Being vulnerable, there has to be a sense of security in that. And I think that a lot of people lack that security, not just with their partners, but with themselves, because they have this thought of the media says, my parents say, my friends say that I should be feeling this thing, or I should be doing this thing, or, this is what it is. And if it's not, then of course they have that thought of something's wrong with me, something's wrong with my partner. And being vulnerable enough to say, well, I don't like this, or I don't want this. It comes from a sense of security in you first. And sometimes it's hard to access that when that is not being displayed.
Yeah, it's definitely really both vulnerability not being healthily displayed, conversations about how to even approach those kinds of things not always being healthily displayed. And I'm saying healthily displayed because people might have that kind of access in their home or in their families or in their friend groups. That might be true, but for people who don't, a lot of their social interactions are coming from things we already attach social to, right? Social media, from TV, from the internet. And when
Exactly.
those full levels of representation, in any regard, really, we don't see them. Now we're eliminating a whole group of people or different varieties of people who rely on these things to demonstrate what it might look like in their own life. It reminds me of a quote from Sex Positive Families that I keep resharing every time I see it. And it says that in order to be, or to the gist of it anyway, that in order to be basically as sex ed present as you need to be for a young person, for a teen, for a child, whatever the case is. You need to be just as accessible to them as online porn. And it's the ease of this internet highway that makes this conversation of vulnerability, of intimacy, of representation really hit home. Because if you don't see these things in your most accessible, most common spaces, how are you expecting people to represent that in their privacy, in their homes? How are you expecting them to teach that to another person, to another adult, to a child? Sometimes it's hard to be what you can't see.
Exactly. And I think that that's part of some of the mental blocks that some people may experience of, because until you get, by yourself without media, that you start really understanding things you like, things you don't like, things you can do without. And I think the next level to that, once you get to that understanding of this is what I want, respecting yourself enough to give you that, and then expressing to your partner or to whomever that this is what I want, or this is what I need, and these are the boundaries that I have. What are some healthy ways? And not every way is going to be the way that everybody needs to take, but what are some healthy ways to kind of express boundaries that people may have when discussing sex, or even wellness around sex?
Yeah. I think one good first step, and I always start with this in any explanation, as you probably heard already, is you first, like you first, period. It's hard to be able to express a boundary or a need or a desire if you've not taken the time to figure out that that's what you want, or
right,
you don't want, or whatever the case is, and not even taking the time to, but also, like you said, respected that it's valid. Like a lot of us might have some kind of hardship or hurdle or boundary or permission that we want to be able to express or grant to someone else, but we think it's wrong, or we haven't seen it somewhere else, or it might bother my person, like whatever the case may be. Owning that for yourself and knowing that it's okay, and starting with you, and starting with that sense of like just self-intimacy is always going to be a really, maybe hard, but really powerful first step. And then it doesn't have to be such a rigid conversation. If you are already in a trusting environment, in an environment where you do feel safe, or talking to your partner or partners or friends, because sometimes these things happen in non-sexual capacities too, or coworker, like whatever.
Right.
If you're already in a relationship where you feel as though you can have the conversation, it can also happen in ways you have other conversations, right? If I tell my person that I don't like okra, like I am allowed to say, look, I know I've tried to try this before, but I don't think it's for me. It can be as simple as that. Hey, when you do X, I feel Y, and I don't really like it. When we talked about this that one time, I was really unsure about it. I thought I wanted to try, but I don't think I do. Revoking consent is a real thing, and it is completely valid, and you should be safe enough to do so. If you are not, that's a whole different level of resources that, but that those things are important. It can happen as a conversation that feels like other conversations. I think that a lot of times there's this pressure to be like, okay, I have to sit down, and it has to be structured, and it needs to be understood, and I have to apologize, and these aren't necessarily, they're not necessarily true. It can happen with ease if you want it to. If you feel as though a boundary has been crossed and you need to stand your guard, you also don't have to apologize for being firm. You don't have to apologize for being clear. Hey, you did this. I did not like it.
Right.
Very much I statements are important, so that your person, or the person you're talking to, doesn't automatically feel triggered to be defensive. Like, I feel X, Y, and Z, and it's your fault. Maybe not so much of that, but more of like, when we went on that date the other day, you reached and you touched my thigh, and I wasn't ready for that. I just want to let you know that as soon as I am, I'll either let you know, or I'll touch you first if I have permission to. And we can move from there. Hey, when we went to bed the other day, you didn't ask me if we could try that new thing, and I felt really uncomfortable the rest of that night. I just want to go back and talk about it, or at least get you to recognize that I wasn't ready. These things are fine, and they don't have a timestamp on them. I don't care if you are just dating. I don't care if it's a one-night stand. I don't care if you're married for 30 years. There's no time limit on when you can rework, reestablish, and respectfully present boundaries. Now, if this is a flat out assault, consent violation situation, there's also no reason for you to have to be nice. And I think that that's really important for people of a variety of marginalized identities to understand, especially trans folks and women. A lot of time non-binary folks also, where there's this air of just like, I'm sorry to have to present this to you, or I understand that this might hurt you, but I think I want to. Like, these things don't have to happen, but I get why they do. I get the shame that's attached to it. I get the guilt that's attached to it. I get the fact that if you're in a situation where assault might happen, like, you might have to mince words. I understand. I just also want to say that if somebody internalizes that feeling, you're not wrong. You're not small, and that what you're feeling is completely valid, even if you have to do what you know might be the opposite of what you want to keep yourself safe.
Yeah, I think that unfortunately we live in a time where people feel that their humanness is somehow encroaching on somebody else's existence.
Yeah.
And that there's enough space for all of us. So at no point, I would hope that people should feel that, because like, I'm a cuddle bug, and I don't feel like I have to apologize for that, because I let you know up front, like, hey, that's my thing. That's my jam. That's what I love, But also, if a guy is, or any other person is in my space and I don't like it, I don't have to be nice or apologize to you for not liking you in my space.
Yeah. It's just because you feel that way doesn't automatically give someone permission to cuddle with you. Like,
yes, exactly. Like, I absolutely, like, physical touch is my love language. I love it. But that doesn't mean that everybody has the right to my body. So if I'm out and about and someone touches me and I don't like it, I absolutely am not going to be apologetic about telling them about themselves and letting them know, I don't know if you thought this was a buffet or a free for all, but let me be clear, it is not. And no, you do not have permission to put your hands on me. And it saddens me that a lot of people are not even told, but they don't feel validated or secure enough in their person to be able to speak up with knowing that it is going to be respected. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of the times it's more so of, well, if I say something, it's going to make it worse.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it does, and that's hard.
Yes,
it's hard, and it's messed up in a society where it's really finally kind of being recognized by everyone else that the status quo that men who don't identify as men of color are really setting the standard for. When you are in a constant power play, sometimes that doesn't end up in your favor. Sometimes, if somebody's all on your body, a push equals violence. Sometimes, and more often than not, saying something all of a sudden gets turned back around on you, even if you've done it gently. I remember a personal instance where I was at a restaurant, and a restaurant I worked in, and I expressed to more than one person, because it's definitely not uncommon knowledge that restaurants are rampant with all types of, like, sexual harassment ridiculousness. But I'm in the kitchen, I'm talking to one of my cooks and managed at this place. I'm talking to one of my cooks, and I'm letting him know, hey, he had a thing with just casual touch all the time. And like you, I can definitely appreciate touches. However, at work, it is this 6-foot rule is not COVID new for me. My bubble has been so I'm letting him know, I'm like, hey, I realize this is a habit for you, and I don't necessarily think you mean anything by it, but I don't like being touched at work. I really take the time to not physically interact with anybody else. If you get bumped into, whatever. But
right.
the time to make sure I'm not doing that to anybody else, because I expect that same respect and to be reciprocated. And he went off. He's just like, what are you trying to say? I didn't touch you. You're trying to say that I'm trying to have sex with you? I didn't say anything like that. This is not how. But that's the interaction that's so common for people.
How did we escalate from I don't like you putting your fingers near my body to now all of a sudden, like, I'm accusing you of trying to have sex with me?
Right. And it was gentle. The way I explained it to you was the same way I explained it to him. Like, I understand you might not be doing something wrong. I understand that this is habitual for you. I understand that I'm asking you to respect my personal decision. I get these things. So here's the thing I'm asking you to do. Explosion. Now, this is a workplace explosion from somebody who might not have done me physical harm. I don't think so. However, that is just the baseline of what's so much more cataclysmic for so many other people.
Right.
Kind of, hey, can you not? Results in being physically harmed, results in being verbally abused. Like, what he said pales in comparison to how common so much more concentrated forms of that happen when no one's looking. I'm in a public place.
Yeah.
Its own level of safety. If he would have gone but so far and I get a little bit louder, there's support all of a sudden. That doesn't happen in these closed quarters, and it doesn't happen in quarantine right now. So I completely understand the feeling, like, sad and frustrated that people don't have this sense of security or this sense of self-awareness, or sometimes just the nerve to be like, hey, no, don't talk to me like that. Don't touch me this way. I don't want to even just be like looked at in that fashion, whatever the case may be. But for many people, it's resulted in everything from feeling small to hospitalizations to worse.
Yes. And it kind of goes hand in hand of, well, don't handle me like this physically, but also don't talk to me this way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard for other people to kind of step out, especially when you're dealing with and as you were talking, I was thinking of like the white male managers that I've had, and how these last like couple of years I've had, and I don't know if it's diversity training or more self-awareness. They have been like very aware of when they talk to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I can't say it's just a me thing, but like, so they won't, because before, stand right over you talking. I'm like, whoa.
All the time.
Whoa, back up. No, back up. But now it's like, in these last couple of years, it's been more of an ask to approach me. It's been more of a, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation. Or even when one of my managers, like before COVID was a thing, can you believe we used to hug random people?
Right. I mean, some people, I still bubble. Some people,
it's just like, whoo. But my manager, like, I had been gone for a while. My manager was like, hey, hey, welcome back. Like, do you mind if I hug you? And I'm just like, oh, thanks for asking. And then I was like, wait a minute, this should be standard practice. Hold on. And for me to be in a situation where I have people who are, who understand, but even in college, I would have to tell people all the time, don't touch me. I don't want to be touched. Leave me alone. And it was like, people just could not understand. And when I say people, we know what we're talking about. Yeah. They just could not understand why it is. Well, my hand is just on your shoulder, or I'm just standing next to you. Like, no, listen to my words. Either, because then I turned into, either you respect me or you don't. And if you don't respect me, then I don't need to have any more contact with you. whether we are on a team or whether we're just in class. I need you to understand that I am to be respected as a person.
Right. And it's hard because, no, hard's not the word I'm looking for here. It pisses me off because I see this kind of negotiation happen so much more commonly with women, with other folks of marginalized genders, with children, and with fuller figured people way more often than I see it happen with men and with white people in general. A friend that I had like would always run into these conversations because she's like a fuller figured Black woman, and it's always just like, but you're so cuddly, but you're so soft. Like, why can't I engage with you like a teddy bear? I'm like, because she's not a toy. Like, that simple. It's that simple. And like I said, this sense, and it kind of goes back to the Chloe situation. In what instance have Black folks, in what instance have Black people of marginalized genders, in what instance have Black women ever been treated as if, not even just represented, but treated as if our own bodies belong to us without apology, without explanation, without some kind of necessity to fight first? She shouldn't always have to put up steel walls to make sure you don't get near her. It should just be respected insofar as when I'm in an airport and someone bumps into a white lady, they are so apologetic.
Oh, sorry, what can I help? And I'm like,
exactly. There's what her stuff. They'll make sure she's okay. They'll offer her extra help. But if that happens to so many other people, it's just like there's this moment that happens where I wonder, did you know they were in your way? Like, did they register to you at all?
Right.
That bugs me, because if that happens in our typical social interactions, imagine the kind of guilt and shame and lack of humanity folks like myself are working through, and we're just like, hey, you can belong to your pleasure. And people are just like, I gotta belong to myself first.
Right.
I gotta belong to my social spaces. I have to belong to the air that I take up at work when people completely disrespect me. Like, it's hard to tell people, hey, if orgasms are your goal, you are allowed to get there. You deserve to get there. While everything outside of their world tells them they aren't even allowed to like feel joy in just the sunshine. Like,
yes,
it's hard.
And I think that those things really go hand in hand. And it's interesting. I didn't really think that this is where this conversation was going to go, but it's wild to just imagine how recently we've come into being able to have the audacity to make the statement that this is mine, that this is my body, and I do with it what I please, regardless of what your faith is, like knowing in society that this body doesn't belong to you. I can wear whatever I choose to wear. I can put on it makeup, no makeup, whatever. I can wear my hair how I want to wear my hair. And throughout the years, throughout generations, we have been taught that our bodies are not ours. Our bodies belong to whatever group of people, whatever family, whatever this, whether it's in arranged marriage or whether it's, promised to whatever faith, right? Regardless of what it is, there's some type of ownership on a human level that we have to have before even getting to the steps of sexual wellness.
Yeah.
Because if you can't say that, I have boundaries that are for, and I see it, I see the negotiation that you talk about, like, as I'm thinking about all the times of when I was younger, of like, it'd be a situation of, and it's something so simple and people don't think about it, go hug title person.
I hate it.
Go give title person a kiss, or it's that kind of thing where it's like, well, I don't want to, but I have to.
Humans, they're mini adults. Like, they know things they want, they know things they don't want. They should be allowed to express those things. I was always the person who's just like, question, why was I so mean? And I'm like, me not wanting to be touched goes back since like in utero, I'm pretty sure. Like, you know, I love you from over there, like family.
Yes, I don't need everybody in my space. And granted, I'm a hugger with people who I want to hug.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Like all my nieces and nephews, you know, and you know, if my sister or brothers tell their kids to like come give me a hug, I'm just like, no. If they want to stay over there, they're good. And we'll have a conversation about that. And it's just like, and it's something that they think about. And I'm just like, look, I do want to have a relationship with them, but I want to have the relationship before they know to embrace me. You know what I mean? Because I think the embrace comes from that relationship. And just like in romantic relationships, there has to be a level of trust that is built that draws me to want to embrace you. And without me knowing how to embrace myself, I don't know how to have a healthy embrace with you. And you could be very healthy for me, right? Mm-hmm. But in this moment, I am not right. I am not well. I am not good for you.
Yeah, there's that. And then I also want it to be said, and I want to just like keep in mind that it's kind of like that dichotomy between like the like RuPaul, if you can't love you, how you gonna love somebody else vibe, and the loving someone else can help you learn how to love you. Like, you don't have to have one to have the other. And it automatically makes me think of, in this particular conversation anyway, it makes me think of BDSM culture, where there's a lot of people that might find a sense of solace or belonging or freedom in a variety of kink cultures, who might not be their best mental and emotional and sexual selves when they are solo. But there's something about either the freedom of or the empowerment of kink and BDSM cultures that then informs how they can have these conversations in their everyday lives. There's a sense of ownership, or body ownership, or power, or learning, or just like social exchange that can happen in kink or leather or other like alternative lifestyle cultures, that can then teach people how to negotiate conversations so that your consent is respected in non-kink situations, that can then teach people how to defend their boundaries in non-kink situations, that can then teach people how to feel more comfortable in their own skin outside of their ropes and chains and leathers and electro play. Like sometimes the reverse can happen to get to the same goal. Like there is the, maybe I have to learn me in order to be able to apply correctly. And sometimes there is the, maybe I need to be able to receive it from the outside in too. So it can happen.
Yeah, I do see that, where other people can show you your worth. And I think that can happen in reverse. And I don't know, because I don't know the numbers or anything like that, but I don't know how often it works in reverse as opposed to working in the way of you first, then the world. I know, but even growing up, you know, your parents, your guardians, those who are your caregivers, like pretty much show you how much value you have. And then you get to explore within that value. Maybe you have more, maybe you feel like you have less, but you get to kind of explore that. And so sometimes getting into adulthood, you may have felt that you lack in value in certain areas. And it maybe sometimes it does take another person to come and show you, no, you are valuable. Yes, you have a voice. And being able to be in situations where just like you put yourself in certain situations to make sure that there is representation there, that your voice is heard, that, you know, the space that you take up is valid and respected. And not everybody is going to respect you, right? We understand that, but but I hope that people understand that not everybody has a right to you. And, you know, if nothing else, taking that small step to understand that okay, I just want to learn me and learn what I want, whether that be through sexual wellness courses, therapy or counseling, mental health guidance, or you know, being involved in your faith, whether that be going to church or a mosque or whatever it is, learning more about what makes you. And I think in quarantine, we've had a lot of time. We've had so much time.
Yeah.
To just sit with ourselves, especially whether we are, with our partners or our families, and whatever that looks like, or whether we're, by ourselves. We have the time to really dig deep and explore what is our likes, what is our dislikes, what do we want or what we don't want, so that when it comes to contact, we can say, hey, I don't really like this, or I'm not really sure how I feel about this. Let's table it for later. Or, that's one thing I'm not budging on. I don't really like that. I'm not gonna give in on that. But for the sake of understanding yourself, I think that it's more important that we take the opportunity to learn who we are, understand that we are valid in our humanness, which I think it's great that you take that hurdle out of sexuality, or even in the erotica that's on the site, the toys that are on the site, the playlists that are on the site. That hurdle of humanness is not something that they have to jump in order to get access to what you have to offer. And that's the thing I can truly appreciate, because having that humanness factor in almost every other aspect of life, whether it's going to the bank or taking a trip to the grocery store or whatever it is, that humanness factor seems to pop up almost every other place. So, I definitely appreciate you creating a space for people to come and experience wellness and pleasure and not feeling ashamed about it. Like, it's an open conversation. So that's really cool. Would you mind telling people where they can find your store or find you?
Yeah. One, I appreciate that. It's a focus. It's a focus, and it's an intentional focus, and I'm always willing to learn. And I think that that's really important. So we're an e-commerce space, which is another form of accessibility. So everybody can get to experience House of Bawdy. HouseofBawdy.com is where we are online, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Kathryn Elaine is also where I'm found on Clubhouse, where all the House of Bawdy stuff is linked, and any promos and things like that. The erotica is subscription only, but specifically centers writers of color, marginalized genders, and a variety of sexual identification. So it's like a for us, by us, about us vibe. And anytime we do visual events, they're always ASL interpreted, and then likely captioned also, because folks with hearing hurdles should also be able to engage in sexual wellness.
Wow, you really did your research. That's really cool.
And like I said, it really does come from a willingness to learn. If somebody's just like, hey, I need this to engage, one person saying it means there's always a lot of other people who might need that. And quite honestly, it's not that hard. We purposely center and not just on the site, and not just our audience, but also in our professional connections, people who identify with the brand mission. So like our ASL interpreter is another Black woman owned business. Our brand affiliation we have with a dope condom company is another Black woman owned business. Like, how we create this is really more about community than just like access to the product. Because if it was just open, like mall type access, really there's a million websites doing that.
Right.
But when I'm saying it's like about and for and built by us, that this is the kind of intention that I need people to be able to see. Like, I know that I'm doing something right when people say the name of the website, and queer folks and Black folks are just like House of Bawdy. Like, they put their whole and I'm like, I know that I'm getting where I want to go, because somebody can look at it and be like, this is for me. Somebody can go on the website and click the Jasmine Sullivan songs, the old school baby making songs, and they're just like, oh, this was my vibe. Like this is for me. Somebody can read the erotica stories and be like, oh, like I remember when this one time, like,
yeah,
for me. And I want that to be the overarching theme, because House of Bawdy is very much intentional. Like, the concept of home is so hard for so many of us, but come here and belong here and know that it's for you. And if I'm not getting to what the you-ness is, let me know. That's where the learning curve comes in.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate you for being here, Kathryn. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space Podcast. I have been your host, Leah. Please make sure that you tune back in on Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time, where we'll be live. Hopefully, we'll be able to have Kathryn back for that live setting. You can be sure to follow us at Take a Space Pod. That's Take a Space POD on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And make sure to follow us on YouTube at Champions of Discourse. Thank you so much. Appreciate you for being here, Kathryn. Y'all have a great one.